Hey there, welcome to the Bible in 5. We're going to be talking about the book of Ecclesiastes in this video, which you're going to be reading this week. And Ecclesiastes, it's one of, I think, the more puzzling and challenging books that's in the Bible. It's often connected with King Solomon, though there's no claim in the book that Solomon wrote it. And in fact, nowhere in the Bible does it say that Solomon wrote it. What we're introduced to in this book is someone called in Hebrew, they're called Kohelet, which probably the most effective English translation of that would be the teacher or the preacher. And the most important thing to recognize in reading the book is that the main voice that we're hearing in the book, the voice of the teacher, is not the author of the book. There's someone else who introduces the teacher to us, and actually someone else makes some conclusions, some short conclusions right here at the end of the book in chapter 12, verses 9 through 14. It's the author kind of evaluating everything the teacher just said and summarizing it for you. So we're introduced by an anonymous person to the teacher right here. And the teacher basically has a few goals. He's a pessimist, or a realist at least. And his basic goal is to deconstruct and take apart all of the things that we take for granted as we go kind of living through our days. And the teacher, he's a teacher of wisdom and insight in ancient Israel. And he has a few things he wants to get across to you. First of all, that we're all going to die. So good news there, right? He has a smile on his face. It's a happy book. Don't read this book if you're in a good mood. The other main thing he wants to communicate to you is that we are puny and tiny, and we live just a little blip on the screen in terms of the huge advance of time. Time is like a huge, huge ocean of water that just washes, going back and forth, and we're just one little speck in that ocean. And so he takes these two ideas, that we're all going to die, no matter what you do, we're all going to die, and we all are just a little blip on the radar, and the teacher makes a conclusion from this. He says all of life is, and our English translations kind of go around the bases here. Meaningless is a common translation. Vanity is a common translation. It's a Hebrew word hevel, and it essentially means mist or cloud. What he's trying to say is that life, because of death, we're all going to die, no matter if you're wise and rich or if you're stupid and poor, right? We're all going to go to the same place. We all go to the ground when we die. And therefore, he concludes that life is like a mist. It's hard to get your hands around. You can never fully grab it. It just slips through your fingers. And this is the teacher's basic view of life. It's a very pessimist or realist point of view. He calls it life under the sun. And so he takes this viewpoint that life is hevel. It's like a mist or a cloud. And he says, God's at work in the world. He believes in God. But he believes that there are ways that God is at work that are totally inscrutable, ways that we can't understand. And so he begins to deconstruct all of the things that we build our lives around instead of God. So he talks about like wealth, pursuing wealth. And he's like, yeah, go ahead, have a blast. And you may live good for a while, but you'll eventually die and have to leave it to someone else, and you'll have no idea what they do with your wealth. He says you can try and, by your moral efforts, be as moral a person as you can, and you're going to fail, but you might succeed kind of, but you're still going to be in the ground along with a person who made no efforts to be a moral person at all. And so he comes to the conclusion that the best way to live is to accept life as a gift. He mentions this numerous times, is to take your life circumstances that you're given, to do your best, to recognize God has a bigger story at work, and that I'm just a small person, and what I can do is to humble myself before God, not put my trust in wealth or my own moral effort, but to just recognize God has given me the gift of life, and I need to seek to honor him with everything that I have. But on the whole, he comes down kind of on the more frustrated side of things. He thinks God is a mystery and very difficult to figure out, and that you can't really know God or what God is up to very well. That's basically the teacher's take on things. So the author presents us with the words of the teacher, and he introduces the teacher to us, and then the author has some crucially important things to say about, and this helps you understand the takeaway of the book. The author comes along and he says, now the teacher was wise. He had a lot of insight about life, and you should pay attention to what he says. But then he says, but you know what? You need to filter what he's saying. you need to take it with a grain of salt, as it were. And what he means by that is he says at the end of the story, no matter what the teacher says, you need to remember your takeaways. He said you need to keep the commandments and fear God, which the teacher said, but there are elements of what the teacher says that may make you think like, oh, well, it doesn't matter what I do then because we're all going to go to the grave when we die or whatever. And the author comes along and says, no, don't misunderstand the teacher. Pay attention to what he says. You need to deconstruct all of the false hopes that you have that you're building your life on but that will eventually crumble. But he says at the end of the day, here's the bottom line. We need to fear God, live before him with humility and reverence, recognize he's bigger, that we're like a mist or like a cloud, and we need to strive for obedience and to honor him in all that we do. So that's essentially the message of Ecclesiastes. It's the interaction of the teacher's words with the author's words, and that's where the power of the book lies. So it speaks very personally to many of our life circumstances and what our day-to-day is about. And I hope you find it challenging and it speaks to you. So thanks so much. We'll see you next time.